Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight on our news.
Morale at the Water and Sewage Corporation seems to be low. Find out why straight ahead.
A local pastor weighs in on pushback to the sanctity of marriage bill.
Our news is brought to you by Alive.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. I'm Christina Dragovich. Topping news tonight, General Manager of the Water and Sewage Corporation, Glenn LaVille, is seeking legal advice after he was fired from that top post yesterday. LaVille telling our news he wasn't surprised by his dismissal, revealing that the past 6 months at Water and Sewage were tumultuous. Here's Jared Higgs.
Former general manager at the Water and Sewage Corporation, Glenn LaVille, says his reputation has been damaged following his dismissal from the company yesterday afternoon. He was fired a week after a controversial audit of the company was tabled in the House of Assembly, a document he says he wasn't allowed to see or respond to until he was questioned by board members.
Just as per the letter, I had a meeting with the permanent secretary and the chairman on the 5th of March, I believe it was. At that time, they indicated what the general concerns raised by the report were. I asked for some more details, but they said they could not provide it until such time as it was tabled. So obviously, I couldn't deal with any of the issues raised, not having any of the details. Subsequent to that, I then had a meeting with them on Tuesday. And at that meeting on Tuesday, when I entered the meeting, they started to ask questions, so I requested a copy of the report. They provided one, and then we went through what we could go through during that period. And so, like I say, at the end of that, I asked for some time for written and considered response to it.
In the termination letter to LaVille, Water and Sewage Corporation Executive Chairman Adrian Gibson said the general manager was evasive and vague when questions were put to him regarding aspects of the report. The letter added that it was clear that LaVille failed to follow directives and or intentionally withheld information and or dealings from the board. In
the letter of dismissal, in one breath, you're told that you're responsible for all of these things and you should have fought whatever board directives there are. And then in another breath, you're told that you've been disobedient to the board by not following their directives.
You think that has been contradictory?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely.
LaVille says the audit contained inaccuracies and factual omissions. The audit's findings suggest that a close friend of LaVille was awarded a multi-million-dollar contract. Asked whether he ever influenced the issuing of contracts, LaVille categorically denied the suggestion.
No, and that's one of the things that will be addressed in the written response, and obviously that'll be shared with the media. But suffice to say, I don't have the authority to award those type of contracts. And they go through a certain international competitive procedure, and then we make recommendations, goes to the board, goes to the cabinet. So it's not quite as simple as they try to make it. And this is where you have the factual omissions.
Now, LaVille was placed on administrative leave back in October and eventually rejoined the corporation. He says when he came back, he sat down with Minister of Works, Desmond Bannister, who apologized for the possible negative effects it could have had on his reputation.
It's been sort of a build-up. Because I know even when I came back from administrative leave, I sat down with the minister. He apologized for, the effect that the leave would have had on my reputation. I also raised the issue about the reputation of the organization. Obviously, the audit continued.
LaVille says he plans to take legal action, although he hasn't retained the services of an attorney as yet. He spent 30 years at the Water and Sewage Corporation and as general manager was responsible for daily operations and strategic planning at the company. Reporting for our news, I'm Jared Higgs.
On the heels of LaVille's dismissal and the release of a water and sewage audit, which Corporation Chairman Adrian Gibson described as a harrowing tale of mismanagement, gross negligence and malfeasance, the union representing workers at WSC say staff morale is low. Jillian Gray has that angle.
Shakeups at the Water and Sewage Corporation over the past year, with the most recent being the firing of General Manager Glenn LaVille, has some on their P's and Q's. Now, while Union President Dwayne Woods says he doesn't know of any other firings, he says the morale at the Water and Sewage Corporation seems to be a bit low.
Well, the morale of the employees had been lowered over the past few months. But I'm sure that this could be rectified with the board and the union working feverishly. We can get the job done.
In contrast, Executive Chairman Adrian Gibson said in his estimation, staff morale is high, adding that many are looking forward to reform and the possibility of a brighter future. Gibson added that they want to shift the culture at Water and Sewage and ensure a transformation. LaVille, who served at the corporation for more than 3 decades, was accused by Gibson of mismanaging the affairs of the corporation. LaVille has since denied that he's done anything wrong.
We are baffled and shocked that it happened. But I'm quite sure that the board of the corporation would have done its due diligence before they make such a drastic step, eh?
Based on rumors, more shakeups are expected. However, Woods says until that day comes, they're just standing guard.
And we hope and pray that it don't come down to our union, and that's where we stand. But in all fairness to all parties, everybody have a job to do. The board have its job to do. The general manager and the executives of the corporation have their job to do, and the union have its job to do.
Woods thanked Gibson for at least extending the courtesy to inform him of the board's decision before it came to light yesterday. Reporting for Our News, I'm Jillian Gray.
Well, the Bahamas may need to revisit how decisions in the country are made. That, according to Bahamas Reef Environment and Education Foundation Executive Director Kajarina McKinney-Lambert. Our News asked Lambert about the uncanny silence of Environment Minister Romuald Ferreira regarding the issue. While she did not say much, Lambert said this.
I think we need to look very closely at our process for approving developments in general, but especially large, potentially very damaging developments, and make sure that we are using the best technical expertise that we have before rushing into decisions that have very long-term consequences.
Ferreira came under fire for his lack of comment on the multi-billion-dollar deal, which was signed before the completion of a critical environmental impact assessment. When asked earlier this week, Ferreira would only say that the scope of the deal falls under the responsibility of the Office of the Prime Minister. Meanwhile, Lambert says Brief is very concerned about the impact the project could have on the environment and the Bahamas government's plans to address those concerns.
We're very concerned about the reported clause in the Heads of Agreement that doesn't allow us to get out of this agreement if it's deemed that the environment would be unduly harmed. This doesn't seem to make any sense at all. And also there seems to be a cap on damages that could be fined for impacts to the environment. That is also completely inadequate. Because we really haven't received much information other than what's in the press about this proposed development, and it seems to be moving forward without adequate consultation and without adequate environmental review.
She adds that one only needs to look at other oil refinery projects in the region to see how important environmental impact assessments, mitigation, and fines are. Lambert used the example of a project on St. Croix in the United States Virgin Islands.
The refinery in St. Croix was also required to spend $700 million in installing cleanup mechanisms to try to get the environment back to what it was. $700 million is a huge amount of money and is indicative of the level of negative impact that oil refinery had on its environment.
While a project of this size would be a major boost for Grand Bahama's economy, Lambert says the long-term consequences should weigh heavily on any deal affecting the environment.
We certainly understand the plight of people in Grand Bahama who need jobs, absolutely. But we're also thinking about sustainable development. And the definition of sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the current generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs.
In other news, Education Minister Jeffrey Lloyd firing back at Bahamas Union of Teachers President Belinda Wilson over the union's threat to take industrial action over several ongoing issues. Lloyd says while there are some unresolved issues, the union should not take out its frustration with the former government on this current Minnis administration. Jasmine Brown has that.
Lloyd says while the union may have had a point, how they went about making it was completely unnecessary.
To me, it's unnecessary. It's just totally unnecessary. What's the point?
On Wednesday, Wilson called an emergency general meeting that attracted over 100 teachers to the union's Bethel Avenue headquarters. As she stood on top of a car, a fired-up Wilson told teachers that the union is preparing to file a trade dispute over several ongoing issues. Those issues include back pay owed to more than 750 teachers, a $1,000 lump sum payment, and union access to teachers on campuses across the country. Lloyd says he found Wilson's actions particularly disappointing, especially considering education officials met with the BUT president on Monday.
It is disturbing to me, and it's unfair.
As for the union's concerns, Lloyd says the Minnis administration has been working to address them, and the ministry will continue to do so.
$3.6 million was owed to the union. 2.3 million of which have been paid in the first 9 months of our administration. I think that is very commendable and deserves the appreciation of the union. Okay? Many teachers have received their back pay. Many teachers are still owed their back pay, and they will be getting it in the terms of the $1,000 that by way of the collective bargaining agreement was owed to the teachers to be paid in September. The unions have a legitimate grief. And we are again working as aggressively and assiduously as we can in order to satisfy that.
As it relates to the $1,000 lump sum payment, Lloyd says there is some discrepancy on who actually qualifies for it. He insisted the ministry is not trying to engage in a contentious relationship with the union. He had this message for teachers across the country.
We respect you, and we are working for you. We want you to be happy, we want you to be satisfied. And yes, there are areas that we have to improve, and yes, there are areas of disagreement, but let's work together, because we are together in this.
Reporting for our news, I'm Jasmine Brown.
And 1 week after the Bahamas Christian Council submitted a sanctity of marriage bill to the Attorney General's office, one pastor is defending the move in the wake of claims that the church should not dictate how married couples live. Pastor Mario Moxie of Bahamas Harvest Church says they are simply seeking to strengthen marriages. Kyle Joaquin reports.
This is not about the church dictating how people should run their marriages. This is about healthiness in the society.
When the Christian Council said it would review and turn in its recommendations to the government's proposed amendments to the Sexual Offenses Act, not many people expected the council to create and present its own bill to government for consideration. And since the council made that presentation last week, Bahamians have been sharing their views online regarding the church and just how much influence it really has in the decision-making process.
I don't think anyone would resist the idea that we need healthier marriage in this country. And that's exactly what the bill seeks to do. By putting in place some type of guideline for marriages, an agreement to take care and to nurture one another. These are just not necessarily biblical principles, but these are just moral principles that all of us would embrace.
The council's bill seeks to do a long list of things, from providing tax incentives to married couples and establishing a national marriage council to creating a guide for marital duty and care. The bill further proposes that spouses have a duty to treat each other with due regard, care, and respect in an understanding manner, demonstrating a commitment to the welfare and meeting the needs of the other party.
This is not to be biased in any way, but it is to create a platform that we can have these conversations. The guidelines, for example, would be developed by church leaders as well as those involved in marriage counseling, secular counselors, as well as law professionals, medical professionals. So these are persons who are actually in the trenches, those that work with marriages on a day-to-day basis, who would have the best interests of healthy relationships and healthy marriages.
So just how far will this bill by the Christian Council go, and how long will they await a response from the Attorney General?
We have no timetable on the AG's decision for the Sanctity of Marriage bill, as well as the amendment to the Spousal Sexual Abuse bill that we also tabled with the AG. The Attorney General has the prerogative to determine the direction that he will go.
Moxie said the Christian Council will wait to see what the AG and the government does before they decide how they will move forward. Reporting for Our News, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
Still to come on Our News, why the Chamber of Commerce CEO says he wasn't surprised by the Bahamas EU blacklisting. That and more when Our News returns.